How's it going, everybody? Thanks a ton for tuning in, and welcome back to the Have a Go Talk Show. I'm your host, Dylan Saucedo, and today we're going to go through Week 9 in the MLR as well as Week 10 and some of those matchups coming up tomorrow night and Saturday afternoon. Let's get right into it. We've got some big ones last weekend. We've got some big ones coming up this weekend. Let's get right into it and let's chat about it. San Diego Legion at the Free Jacks kicking off Week 9. This score was 39-12, and we actually had the Legion winning this game. An electric match for sure. Legion came out hot. I think started off with a 7-0 lead, but the Free Jacks playing some great ball in the forwards on the day. I believe scoring a maul try or two, and then number 23, Jack Reeves, comes on the pitch. I think right before halftime. Right after halftime, is able to score a try on a jackal and an offload. And then later in the game, calls the match with an intercept try going 65 meters down the pitch. Electric play from Mr. Jack Reeves, and he's our man in the match for that first one. Big result there for the Free Jacks for sure. They've been getting some wins stacked together, and they're sitting at the top of that table now, right below Chicago in the standings. And Legion obviously starting the season off really hot, 5-0, but have lost 3 in a row now. It seems like that 7 style attack is being able to be stopped, right? So we're gonna have to keep an eye on that as we keep moving forward throughout the season. But a big result there nonetheless. Next match was Old Glory at NOLA. This one was electric for sure. So we've seen NOLA score a crap load of points this year. And Old Glory's been playing some great rugby as well, but NOLA getting the best of them on the weekend. 51-29 would be the final score there. And Xavier Mignon going for a hat trick on the day with a stellar performance. A couple of those being some individual tries, one of them being a line break and an offload, but a great performance nonetheless. He'll be our man of the match for that one, and definitely up for our player of the week as well. Him and Jack Reeves, two amazing performances on the weekend, and obviously led their teams to big wins as well. So amazing stuff there. And the next match we had Houston at Miami Sharks, and this one was a nail biter, right? So we picked Houston to win this game. Obviously, Miami's been having a slow start to the year, but Miami coming out hot at home. Some humid conditions, right? A night game under the lights in Miami, and what better place to play some rugby here in the States? That game finishes up 31-22 in favor of the Sharks. Miami playing some great rugby in this game. They had a double Canadian international. Josiah Moore was added to the squad this past week, and he was able to dot down a try on debut. They were also able to get a nice chip and chase from their scrum half, Tomas Encarte, I believe. He's I believe an Uruguayan international, maybe an Argentinian international, but plays some great rugby. And they've been electric as well this year, losing some of these games and not scoring as many tries as they probably would like to. But in this game, the attack was flourishing for sure. They were playing some great rugby, and the Sharks win that one on the weekend. That'll bring me to 0-3 on my weekend picks for Week 9, and starting off the season not in the best shape. Moving into that next game, we had Utah at LA, and this one a road win from Utah, 45-28 being that final score. And this game was a little bit of a whirlwind. Halftime saw a 45-minute break go to this game because of the MLR's ambulance rules and the safety of the players. So an ambulance had to take a player to the hospital earlier in the match, and by halftime they weren't able to bring that back. And so they had to wait for an ambulance to come to the match, and it took 45 minutes for this game to get back going again. The score at halftime, I believe, was pretty tight. I think it was 21-21 at some point in this game, but Utah being able to pull away from this one. Joey Mano started the day off pretty hot with 2 tries on the wing, one on a crossfield kick, which was just phenomenal. And in LA, showing some great spurts of rugby, but that full field kind of attack system that they have running. They're not kicking for territory. They're not trying to, kick the ball for exit down the field for a lineout. They want the possession. They want to truck it down. One thing their head coach mentioned that I wanted to highlight is that they want to show the fans that this game is electric. The RFCLA is a great team, and they can bring the ball from the 22 all the way to the try zone. Something else they want to prove to themselves as well is that they can do those kind of things in tight situations, right? So say down the season, down the stretch, you have a tight game at the end of the year and you need to win it, right, to get into the playoffs. The West, obviously, pretty tight this year. You're going to need to be able to take the ball from the 22 all the way down to that try zone and be able to score tries in that way. And RFCLA has been proving that all year, 28 points on the day, but not enough for Utah as they win that one. Obviously, RFCLA was our pick for this one, so starting the weekend off 0-4, unfortunately, but Utah showing some great rugby after the bye week. We were actually able to watch Utah 2 weeks ago against the Free Jacks, and lost that one in the second half. But Utah playing some great rugby throughout the year, and really excited to see how they keep improving throughout the rest of the season here. Last weekend or last match on the weekend, we've got Anthem at Chicago, and this one was a crazy one as well. Anthem proving that this league is level completely all around, and obviously, showing Chicago they're a strong side. Chicago, not putting anything down for them. They wanted to bring their stars out. They brought the dogs out, if you will, and they played some great rugby. I don't want to take anything away from Chicago either in this match. They get the W at home. We're able to control the game for most of it, right? Kind of just letting Anthem do what they needed to do in their kind of system. Playing some good defense. Obviously, second half saw Anthem score a couple of tries that may not have been wanted by the Hounds there, but we're able to seal that game and really seem calm and collected in this match. And we'll talk about that a little bit as we get into the power rankings. But Anthem losing this one, Chicago wins 28-20. Like I said, a little bit of a nail biter there. Anthem had a chance there to win it at the end, weren't able to pull it away, and Chicago will take the win in Week 9. That'll bring me to 1-4 on my Week 9 picks. So very excited to get a win there. Obviously, the Hounds a great side, and they've been playing some great rugby. So it's been amazing to support them this year. And just this morning, got some news that my boy Jake Kinnebeck will be starting on the bench for in that first 23 for the Hounds this weekend. So very excited for him. Shout out my boy Jake Kinnebeck. He played here with me at the University of Utah, was my captain last year, and definitely one of my best friends. So yeah, just very excited for him, and really, really excited to watch the matchup this weekend between them and the Seawolves out in Seattle. That'll be going on actually tomorrow night. So we'll chat about that here in a minute. But moving into some of those standings, obviously after the week, we've got the Western Conference. Thank you MLR for the graphic here. Houston sitting at the top of the table, 2 points above Utah, and only one loss separates those boys there. Utah obviously have their bye already, and Houston yet to do so. San Diego 5-3 on the year, started off hot with 5-0 and have lost 3 in a row. So they're moving down a little bit, sitting even with Utah at 26 points, but one more loss to their name as they haven't had their bye week yet either. LA and Seattle rounding out the bottom of the table there in the West, and Seattle playing some good rugby, just not being able to win some of these games. Had a bye week this week, and I know that Coach Clark, he's putting some great work with the boys and getting that attack, ready to go for this weekend. And it's going to be a heck of a match on Friday night out in Seattle. That'll wrap it up for our Western Conference standings. And now moving into the East, we've got Chicago, obviously, sitting at the top of the table, 32 points to their name on the year. Some amazing rugby being played by them, and that one blemish being taken from Utah, I think earlier in February. So that was a great match. Utah came out hot on that day, and Chicago have been ruling ever since. So it's been a great year for them. They sit at the top of the table. Right below them is New England and DC, 3 points apart there in their standings. DC obviously one less win than New England, and New England stacking 2 in a row now, so 3 in a row I believe actually. So amazing rugby from those two teams. We've got NOLA, Miami, and Anthem finishing at the bottom of the table. One thing I want to take a look at here though is NOLA and Miami 5 points apart, but with the same record, right? So we talked about this last week a little bit. It's part of that bonus point try, those bonus points, right? So you score 4 tries in a game, you get a bonus point. Obviously, with the win, you get a couple of points as well. But you win those, or you lose those games, and you grab a bonus point. It's a lot better for those standings and your table points there. So amazing stuff to kind of pay attention to throughout the rest of the year, and that will definitely be a storyline as we get to the end part of that season here. Miami looking for their first playoff berth, and NOLA looking to get back in it. So yeah, big race going on there, and obviously Anthem not having the best year, but looking for that first win of their MLR career, and almost got it this last weekend. We'll check on this upcoming weekend next here, and see what's going on for Anthem for the rest of the year. But so definitely some great development there, and really happy with their performance this last weekend. With that, we're going to go into our power rankings. So the Have a Go talk show here, we want to release some new power rankings into the world of rugby, and maybe talk about a couple of different things that aren't represented as much on the standings and in the table, right? So the Have a Go talk show, we want to do our power rankings a little differently, like I mentioned, and these are going to be determined by a few different things. First thing being the fan impact. So how are these fans, impacting the match and bringing the energy to the game? We see some cities like Chicago, like Utah, like LA, like Seattle, right? These teams have great fan bases, and they've been a huge piece of the program and kind of that structure there. So we really want to see these fans make an impact, and obviously that's not going to bring a team from 11th to 1, but it could definitely bump a team up after a good performance and maybe a short loss, a close loss. So that's something to pay attention to there. We've got clutch factor and style of play playing a part there as well. The clutch factor, just being able to close out games, right, and even maybe score tries and get points in tight situations, right. So we're seeing some teams like Houston being able to almost close out the end of matches, right, but not being able to do it too much. So the results show that they're losing these games and not being able to win these games. But looking at that clutch factor, Houston's got a lot of guys who can go and break the line in those tough situations. And as a team, they're playing some great team ball towards the goal line, and especially getting from the 50 to that 22 back into their green zone. So it's amazing stuff there, and something I want to pay attention to for sure. Moving on, the style of play is another thing we want to take a look at, and this goes and speaks to kind of LA's style of play, right? We're watching them go 80 meters down the field to score tries and overpower teams, right? They put a couple of chip kicks through. We saw that this weekend with Gonzalo Bertro and my guy Reese McDonald. So amazing try there, but that kind of play is something that we need to talk about and something that we need to pay attention to in these rankings and make sure these teams are getting credit for what they're doing on the pitch and not just credit for the results they're having after the game. So that's something I want to take a look at. The last two things here, eye test and obviously recent form, right? You've got to take the wins and losses into account and kind of how these teams have been playing, right? Maybe a team's had 4 close games in a row. Maybe they only won one of those, right? We don't want to deter them too much because they've been playing some great rugby. Just haven't been able to have that clutch factor and kind of finish those games off. That'll be something we take into account. And then the eye test, right? Looking at these teams, how do they match up across the league, right? Does Chicago match up against Utah? Does Chicago match up against Seattle, right? How do those teams match up? And obviously, there's some head-to-head stuff in there, right? We've got wins and losses against each other, all those kinds of things. But I think that's a big thing to pay attention to is looking at these teams. How do we think they can go perform throughout the rest of the year? So that's how we're going to do our power rankings here at the Have a Go Talk Show, and just very excited to get into that today and bring you guys our first power ranking. So for Week 9, we've got Chicago Hounds sitting at the top of the table. Right below them, we've got New England, Utah, and RFCLA rounding out the top 4. 4 great teams there in the top. Obviously, 2 from the East, 2 from the West. Not on purpose, but both sides of the conference playing some great rugby this year. Utah Warriors obviously have stacked a couple of tight games into their win record, and obviously coming off the bye, they've been pretty hot. New England Free Jacks stacking a couple of wins up as well, so they move up to number 2. RFCLA had that 4-game hot streak, lost a tough one this last weekend to Utah, so they're going to sit right behind them. Sabercats moving down in what seems to be a little lackluster match for them this last weekend. Obviously, Miami getting the best of them. So we're going to see kind of how they move throughout this next week or two. But they're going to sit at 5 from now. 6, 7, and 8 goes to NOLA, San Diego, and Old Glory. Old Glory playing some great rugby and really wanted to move them up quite a bit, but just can't feel like, or I just don't feel like we can move them above NOLA Gold yet. I think NOLA, got the best of them this last weekend and obviously have been scoring a crap load of points like we mentioned before. And so I think they're going to have to sit at number 6 this week. But NOLA definitely on the uprising, and San Diego Legion dropping down quite a few spots as they were sitting at number 1 in some other power rankings earlier this year. Obviously, my boys over there, Will Hooley and Alex Corbicero at the Rugby Rundown, doing their own power rankings, and me, kind of going off of what they're doing, obviously, but making it a little bit different and focusing on some other things. So I think that'll be a great addition there to kind of compare these two rankings, right? Miami Sharks, Anthem, and unfortunately my Seattle Seawolves rounding out the bottom of the table this week. Miami with a big win over Houston last week, and we want to see them keep building. Don't want to give them too much credit yet off of one win, but on the road this week, I believe. Hopefully they'll get a big win again. Anthem, moving up from a spot from number 11 is what I kind of had them at last week. Anthem playing some good rugby against Chicago against the top of the table. So we're going to kind of see how they move throughout the rest of the year. And Seattle, dude, we need some wins. They've been playing some good rugby, obviously still supporting them through and through, but I need the Seawolves to play some great rugby so that we can move them up in the standings because, man, this hurts to put them at number 11, I'll tell you what. Yeah, I'm sorry, boys, but we got to do it. Got to put some fire under there. So very excited to see them play this Friday night against the Hounds at home. It's going to be a big one for sure, and yeah, definitely going to be paying attention to that one. So that'll do it for our power rankings for Week 9. Now we'll move into the schedule for this upcoming weekend and kind of go through some of these games We've got 2 kicking off on Friday night and then 3 on Saturday night. First on the weekend, we've got New England Free Jacks at the Anthem. It's tough to argue against Anthem's rugby this past couple of weeks, but New England Free Jacks playing some great ball, and was able to see them at the final last year. I think they have what it takes to win this game, and think they're going to win it convincingly. We'll go New England Free Jacks in the first one on the weekend. Next, we've got Chicago Hounds at Seattle Seawolves. Obviously, my guy Jake getting the debut on the weekend for the Hounds, but Seattle need a big win coming off a bye week. They're back at home in Tukwila. Got to take the Seawolves in this one. Going to be a little bit of a hot take on my end, but the Seawolves through and through. Got to support them. And yeah, together we hunt. So let's go, boys. Big one shaping up there. And Saturday kicking off with Miami at Old Glory. Again, 2 great teams that have been playing some good rugby. Old Glory, the loss last week. Miami, obviously, with the win. But yeah, Miami on the road this week, like I said, want to see them get a big win. Old Glory's been playing some great rugby, but I think Miami's backs are going to be too much for Old Glory. I'm going to take Miami Sharks in that one on the weekend. The next match, we've got Nola Gold at Houston SaberCats, and this one's a tough one, right? Because Houston's been putting some great performances together, just haven't got on the winning side of those, and Nola scoring a ton of points. I don't know how many times I can say that, but they're scoring a ton of points, and I think that, on the road, Saturday night at Houston, I think they have what it takes. I'm going to take Nola to upset Houston in that one and move Houston down a little bit in those standings. To finish off Week 10, we've got Utah at San Diego in a tough Western Conference clash. These teams sitting even in the table right now, like we talked about a little bit ago. So this one's going to be a tough one. San Diego Legion kind of on the back end of a great start to the season. Hoping to see them kind of bring some better fire into the game. But Utah, playing some good rugby, got the win last weekend against my boys at RFCLA, who I thought, were really hot going into that game. So I think we're going to take Utah in this one. I think their forwards and those mauls are going to be too much for San Diego to go off of. And, Utah's been playing some great defense as well. LA, obviously, with a really dynamic attack, and they were able to keep them to 28 points. Obviously, wanted to keep them lower, but we're able to do a good job on defense there. And we're going to take the Utah Warriors to win that one on the weekend. So that'll be our picks for this upcoming weekend in Week 10. And, we'll break down some more matches coming on Monday. Obviously, we've got some Tuesday matches, some Wednesday matches coming up next week between RFCLA and New England, and then Seattle at Anthem. So some big ones coming up, and going to have to pay attention to it this weekend. Going to be sitting here. We're going to be watching the games. I challenge you guys to go out there and watch a game of MLR this weekend. There's going to be some great ones, and it's going to be an amazing weekend to watch some rugby. So thanks a lot for watching. That'll be it for our Week 9 recap and our Week 10 picks and predictions. Thanks a lot for watching the Have a Go Talk Show, and thanks for joining us. Finish off, follow, share, subscribe at Have a Go Talk Show on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. Cheers.